Hello, my name's Hayden. This is a lap guide for 25S3 HPD ARX OC1. This is a 203514. It was set with the public setup in the Proto-Gt Thrustmaster Discord. This was done in an official session, so official quali. You see it's 4 race as well. And yeah, this is going to be guide between why I chose what I do for corners, how you can feel what you can do for corners, and yeah, let's get started. So just set the lap up, typical way. Turn one, straight in with really difficult corner, really interesting corner as well. References, there's not much in terms of references here. I'm using the 100 board. I'm braking around 85 meters. I don't have a solid reference here, which isn't the best, and there's definitely some reference you could probably use. I'm seeing this here, that might be one. This like tree line here, that could be it. Actually, that reference there, that's actually a brilliant one. Just depend on what monitors you've got, what screen size, what field of view you're running as well. But yeah, just some references you can point out. Here, 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 here. Markers on the track as well. But yeah, turn one. Already not hitting a very high brake pressure as you do in this car. Gonna want to make sure we don't lock up. Rears will lock up first here. So if you think you're hearing a lock up, don't move the wheel and bring the tires down because any movement will obviously spin the car. For this corner, I've chosen quite a late turn in. Typically for cambered corners like this, you want to go for an earlier turn in because the inside's lower, so the car decompresses if you try and take lit turning. But because the exit is so tight here, I do blow the apex on this lap, which is just take it with a grain of salt. Because the exit is so tight, obviously it's a hairpin. You can't take that earlier turning because you spend so long on the insides, and you just can't get the good exit because you hit such an early apex that your car will just wash out. If you hit this apex here, your car would just fly off the track. And if you decide instead to spend a lot of time on the inside trying to rotate the car, you just lose a lot of speed. So with this car in particular, it doesn't feel like it's a theme across a lot of cars. But this car in particular, I've chosen quite a late turn in. Obviously this lap isn't ideal, I do lock the front a bit and I do miss my turning point. But if you can keep the car from locking up and just keep it smooth through this corner, when you get to the apex here, it's easily flat out and you get a nice run. I'm not sure why a later turn in here works better than maybe a more middle groundy one. Maybe it's something to do with how stiff the car is. It isn't a typical car I drive, so that might be a theme across stiff cars. But yeah, so experiment with the turning point. Obviously, don't do what I did here and lock the tires up. Choose a nice and not safe braking point. You want to be braking at the limit, but you know, just brake so that you aren't over half the time, like I'm doing here. And experiment with the turning point. See where you can get the car to live smoothly. Without locking up. Obviously, it hasn't really been an issue here for me. Mainly just locking the tires. But yeah, turning point is going to be a big one. Obviously, that affects your turning rate, so keep a track of that, and obviously that affects how fast you release the brakes. Anyway, easily flat out, nothing really much to worry about here. If you want to cut it really close, you can gain an extra like 300ths. Most circumstances, it's not worth it. I'm leaving half a car's width. It's gonna lose the 300ths, but I'm not gonna get a slow down and bust my lap up. And obviously, this was my only qualifying lap, so wouldn't have been ideal. Anyway, on to the com. Go back to the cockpit view here. My brake marker is the start of this curb, reaching maximum pressure when the start of the curb disappears. I'm going to use all of this curb on the entry, almost, I think. Pretty much all of it. Yeah, that is all of it. Obviously, don't go over the side. It can be easy to do that. Uh, Curb's not going to really affect your braking performance too much. Just do keep note of it when you are braking, especially with the movement. Can be a bit janky. But anyway, into this corner here. So this curb, obviously, we're going to want to use it. Um, the earlier that you exit this curb, the less of a bounce you're going to get. You know, the more perpendicular you are to this curb when you exit, um, you, the more you bounce up, and it doesn't actually hurt your time too much. You don't lose too much time for it, but it's a bit unpredictable, and you are in the air, so you aren't doing whatever you can do as well as it could be. So just something to keep note of. If you are experiencing a lot of bouncing coming out of this curb, try and maybe exit a bit earlier. As well, uh, the earlier exit, earlier you carry speed. So it is a nice balancing thing. You can find a lot of time by getting the right turning point and being able to exit with a lot of speed and quite straight against the curb. Um, Choosing a nice middle ground here, in the middle of the track. Obviously, how I take this corner is based on how I want to take this corner, which is obviously then again based on how I want to take this corner. So we are setting up for the right-hander at the end of this chicane. Again, want to use all this curb on the inside. Not all of it, sorry. We do want to go over it. We want to get on this dark patch here. This dark patch has so much grip. It turns the car for you. It's amazing. However, if you don't get fully into it and your wheels are maybe just like against the thing here. So if my car was over just a little bit here, the wheels get hooked into the curb and you get loads of oversteer. And it's recoverable. It doesn't really spin you most of the time. Actually, I've never had it spin me yet, but it does lose you all that time, obviously. Traction control kicks in when you're on throttle, and it's just not nice. So make sure that when you are going over this curb, you commit to it and don't go over too much, because you can get slowed down and you can bottom out. That's especially relevant if you have exited this corner too early. It's really, really easy to bottom out in this corner here. So just something to keep note of there. Again, exit as the intro of that was determined by how I want to take this. If you can get on this curb, brilliant. It is actually really helpful to get on this curb. Just to open the track up more, it's not a rumble strip, so it doesn't lose you much grip. And for this corner, this curb on the inside here is super, super important. Stick it in third, half lift just to get the car rotated in. Don't really want to be touching the brakes here just because the speed between, the speed difference between here and here is so small that it's not really worth it. Oops. So braking will lose you too much time here. Obviously, I do dab brake a tiny, tiny little bit, but ideally it just wants to be a lift. I do cut a little bit too much here. I do go into the gravel. My exit isn't fantastic. As you can see, I did back out a little bit on the steering just to make sure I didn't cut the corner. So ideally, I wouldn't have about to do that, and my turning point would have been fine. Again, all the curb on the exit. Nothing really much to say about this corner. Just make sure you're using this curb. Half lift in thirds to get the car rotated in. For this corner, braking reference is the start of this curb. This is a double apex corner. We've got nice references on the inside here, so this can help guide you to help you figure out where you are. This corner has a decompression with the inside of it, so you just need to take note of. You will lose grip, so build that into your line, expect it. And don't try and force the car through the corner because it won't end well. Every time I've tried to push it a little bit too much, I ended up getting oversteer or just washing out. So just let the car kind of roll through the corner. Obviously, you aren't waiting. You don't want to be actively rotating the car. That is the whole goal. but don't try and push it. This wasn't a perfect double apex. I should have been out slightly wider, so I should have had an earlier first apex. Should have broke a bit later as well. So you see I'm waiting on the throttle a little bit here. But yeah, that's the gist of that corner. Probably don't want to touch this rumble strip here if you can help it, because it's just going to lose the front grip, and we're already on the limit of the front at this point. So, you know, decreasing the limit while we're at it isn't going to work well. For this corner, I don't really have any references. This could probably work, but it's such a short burst that getting your eyes across the screen and focusing in and everything is so difficult that my reference is just, you know, when I'm touching this curb and how long it's been since I exited this corner. So if you can learn that skill, brilliant. If not, there are some references you can use. This curve, these full cones, this. If you can find any noticeable markings on the track, maybe that one. There you go, that might be it. That could be usable. But yeah, same story for this corner actually. This curb, you can use it if you can get over to it. If you can't get over to it, you know, if your exit is different from the other corner, perfectly okay. It's not really too advantageous to use this curb. If you are using it, make sure you are ready for the bounce, because the descent from this curb is quite aggressive, and you know it will affect the grip of the tires. So if you are going to do that, then make sure you're ready for when the car bounces a little bit. You might be able to see it on this. I don't know if I got enough. Kinda, you can kind of see it. It is noticeable when you're driving, so just be ready for that. Anyway, similar story for this corner as it was the last corner. Car doesn't really want to get through this corner. Doesn't feel very happy through here. So just allow the car to rotate in. Don't try and force it. You know, it is obviously a downhill, so there's decompression going on. I don't really know much else about the corner. You know, we are not wanting to hit this curb. This curb will lose all the grip on this tyre and traction control kick in, and we'll lose all the time down here. Again, all the track on the exit, pretty self-explanatory for that one. Next corner, here, Puan. So my reference for this corner is this thingy. You can use the 50 board here probably, and you'll be able to find a tree that looks particularly interesting. If you can use that, bingo, go for it. All the curb on the entry, it's not really too noticeable. I'm not fully on it here. Close enough. This corner is deceiving. You know, it looks like the apex is probably near about here, but you know, when you get around to it, it just keeps going. So be ready for that. It is quite a late apex compared to what you think it might be. And obviously it's completely blind as well. I mean, you can't see the apex at all until you get there. So just have a bit of trust in the corner. Again, it is downhill, so there's a little bit of loss of grip, but you know, we've got all the downforce at this point, so you don't really notice it too much. You know, it's important to balance the early turning, because the early turning is going to allow you to get a little bit more rotation out of the car. But obviously don't want to clip this curb on the inside, and you definitely don't want to watch out wide and getting off track. Or something else to note, this grate here, this drainage thing, if you touch it while you're on the limit and you're washing out, it can unsettle the car and it can get the rear to come out a little bit. So just be ready for that if you do see yourself coming out this wide, or like this wide. Just so that you keep note of, obviously you don't want to go out there on an optimal lap. That said, this corner wasn't optimal in my run, did miss the apex as you can see. But yeah, just experiment with the turning, you know, later turning. You are going for quite an aggressive turning here, just because there's not much time between the corner and the entry. And, you know, the later you turn, the more you're going to get, and the harder it's going to be to get this apex. So, do try and experiment with that. We are flat out as soon as we hit this corner. Um, Around here it can get a little bit sketchy with colder tires, or if you've overheated the tires, especially through the last little bit here, or you've had an earlier slide through poo on. So just be careful that if you're on cold tires, if you're fully heated up and everything, it should be fine. We're not really pushing the car too much here. There's quite a bit available. But yeah, on the exit here, we don't have to use all this curb. No, we aren't really pushing them, as I said. But if you need to, come out here. It is good practice as well. It helps scrub the tires a bit less. And obviously, if you are getting a little bit over the limit, and maybe you haven't noticed as well, this can help to stop that from becoming a problem. This corner, rating references here. You might be able to use this as well, or these, this. You know, lot of stuff here, corner here as well. This thing, that thing, a lot of stuff you might be able to use. My personal reference is the start of this curve though. And we're just going to look to obviously set up the corner after this. This corner here isn't really a consideration because there's enough time in between them. So we do want to focus on maximising this as a singular chicane basically. The thing with this corner, there's a lot of camber on the inside. And the camber it gives you a noticeable amount of grip when you get there. So the longer you spend close to this curb, the more grip you're going to have. It is important though to not prioritize that. I do overdo it a little bit here. And you can tell that because when I get up through it, I'm just sort of on maintenance for a little bit, and it's not ideal. So if you can't help that, go for it. But yeah, don't touch the curb on the inside here, it'll lose all the grip on this tyre, which obviously you don't want. Again, I am setting up for this corner here, and on this corner, the car's going to wash out, it's going to want to wash out a little bit on throttle, especially if you've overcooked the corner a little bit. It's going to want to wash out a little bit on the exit, so just be patient on the throttle, make sure you've opened the corner up enough. Don't really have to use brakes. A lift, like a 3/4 lift is enough, maybe a bit more. Obviously I'm using a touch of brakes here to get the car in, so it's not perfectly optimized. But yeah, car's going to want to wash out a little bit here, so just be patient on the throttle, look out for that. Again, don't use curb on the inside, it'll lose all the grip on the rear left as well. Not much to say about that corner, not much else, sorry. Use all the exit use all the exit, yeah. Didn't do it quite here, pretty close though. This corner, I experimented in the race actually, and I don't think this curb is ideal to use in this car. I could be wrong about that, so do whatever you can find the most time with. Obviously I did this lap and I touched this curb, but in the race I found that not going on the curb was actually quite helpful, so maybe something to consider for you. This corner has, a throttle marker which is really nice. This thing here, lovely. A bit of camber on the inside. Try not to touch this curb at all if you can help it. Again, just letting the car rotate in. Obviously, you are helping it in with the downshift and the braking. Getting on throttle at this point, and make sure you don't touch this gravel at all if you can help it. Obviously, you're going to at some point. It's pretty much unavoidable. You are going to do it at some point, but as much as you can help it, don't touch this gravel. It really digs into the car and slows you down, and it can actually get some oversteer and lose even more time. So yeah, something to think of. If you do scrape it, it's fine. You might lose, half a cent or something, which isn't the end of the world. Yeah, especially along such a long lap. Anyway, this corner, flat out. Not much to say about it. It's flat out. Touch the grate on the inside here. Don't have to wash out to this curb, but it is somewhat helpful because you know, helps to scrub less speed off the car, obviously. And if you do somehow get a bit of oversteer, which can actually happen, especially on cold tyres, because these bumps here, you can actually see it, the car get a little bit loose. Thankfully, nothing the downforce can't handle with these warm tyres, and without me cooking any of the tyres at all through any part of the entry here. But if you do end up getting a bit of slides, just having the muscle memory of washing out to this, and also you've got the extra safety net of the green turf as well, can be helpful. Obviously I do it on this lap here. It just helps to keep the car from scrubbing too much speed off, and we're in a massive flat out section here. So yeah, pretty standard, flat out, flat out, flat out. Here, I choose to miss this apex by a little bit. On the inside, as I'm sure some of you will have experienced, there is a huge bump in this car, like enough to destroy races. Because if you hit it and you get a snap and boom, right to the wall. So I choose to miss this apex. I don't think it's by a massive amount. Definitely not. No. But if you touch this white line, you're fucked. So it's just easier, and you can make it a bit more aggressive in terms of how much you're missing. Honestly, I've probably about maximised it here. But if you want to miss it more and just be safe, that's fine. It's pretty easy to take a flat with a line that's all the way over here, so nothing to worry about there. Trying to go past this curb because the car will bottom out. Actually, one more thing to say about this corner: all the camber on the inside. As I said before with T1, and I think it's, I don't know what it's called. An earlier turn-in is going to help with this corner. So early turning with not much steering angle is actually really beneficial through here. So just experiment with that. Try and find a line that follows the camber as best as possible, because you don't want to deal with a car that's decompressing, especially not through such a such a fast corner. Yeah, so just experiment with turning point. My turning points might look a bit early here, just because I want to follow this camber, as you can see it here. Again, not trying to go past this curve, obviously getting off track to go past the white line. My reference here is this white line, which isn't perfect because I do brake beyond it. Quite far beyond it actually. It's just sort of guidance, if anything. There's some references around, that might be one. That isn't one for me. Just some, I don't know, funky looking trees up there, could be something. Who knows? Oh, track markings, that's another big one. There's a lot of dust on the ground here, a lot of obviously tire marks, so if you can find one that helps, like maybe this cross up here. Yeah, there you go. There's a thing where this cross is. But yeah, just brake at the limit, pretty standard. Obviously, this is a big climb. It's probably about a meter. So what this is going to do is it's going to throw your car out as soon as you get over the top of it. So aim for somewhat of a late apex and just be ready for the lack of grip. Don't touch this curb on the inside as well. It's quite an early turn in some ways. Make sure we're not locking the rears either. You will hear the change in grip, so try and build around that. Because it is off camber here as well. So that early turn is going to help with just the fact you can't get much rotation while you're coming through this corner. Get middle of the road, pretty standard for a chicane. This curb, don't touch the red for sure. Try to avoid this race part here because this sort of catches the car, and it slows down the inside. And if you get on throttle while that curb is catching you, what happens is when you get on throttle, the traction control kicks in and you just lose loads of time. Like you can lose a tenth or two if you touch that curb and try and get on throttle. So you can touch it. Just be ready to apply less throttle if you do touch it. You see here I do avoid it for the most part. I am careful on throttle. You can see it actually kick the car around a bit if you watch carefully. So yeah, something to keep note of there. This curve is going to kick the car around a little bit. Yeah, stand on an exit. You can use all this darker green stuff. I think it's probably up to this drainage ditch here. I'm not too sure though, so find that out for yourself because I don't actually know. You can definitely go on this green stuff here though, and not getting off track. And just make sure you're straightening the wheel out and letting the car just drive out to the exit here, and make sure you know using as much power as you can on this final stretch. And there you go. That's it. 203.541. I'm gonna play this whole lap as well, just so you can see it in full. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful. And yeah, give me some feedback as well if you have any questions as well, or just any way you think this could be improved other than using a script. Because no, I will not be doing that. But yeah, thank you for watching.